this, and Ejvind has found out that LP wanted to host today, and I'm very happy to see that. So we have been through a few items and a few topics during the last few months, and hopefully we can get some more interesting stuff today. Unfortunately, as you heard earlier, we had some cancellations, so I'm now stepping in to fill one of those. So bear with me if I didn't have that much time to prepare since we found out yesterday. So first, I want to just hear, like, how many in here have experience with Snowflake? Like, okay, everybody. How many have a lot of experience with Snowflake? Like a handful, 10, yes. How many would say they come from large organizations? A little handful, yeah. And the rest coming from small organization or independent or consultants? Small, yeah, a mix. All right, nice to know, since we also want to improve all these. So what I want to touch upon is a framework we're using. My name is Rune Bendix Wittchen. I'm working for Devoteam here in Copenhagen, and we are deploying Snowflake at both small and large customers. That's also why I wanted to ask you a little bit about that. So when you go out and introduce new customers to Snowflake, we have the issue that we want to have a framework that is flexible towards the customers, that can handle both smaller and larger enterprises in a way to get them started on Snowflake in a smart way, so they do not end up taking decisions that they will regret later. So the product that we have developed internally is called Snowsled, and it aims to target this issue. I will just take a few notes on who Devoteam is. Oh, did I lose some connection here? Well, Devoteam is a European group with around 11,000 employees, and we are around 1,000 people working with data, and a few hundred of these are in Denmark. And we have around 30 people working with Snowflake at the moment here. I do have some issues with the internet though, but okay. So why did we develop Snowflake? Snowsled here on Snowflake. We've been working together with Snowflake for the last 4 years, and are trying to tighten that relationship so we can go quickly to market and have a stable solution when we go out there. A lot of our customers trying to reach the top of the pyramid here, as you probably are aware. So what we recommend to do when we start off with getting to having AI analytics and have a solid data foundation is to start off with using cloud always-on databases. It's not a new thing if you're regular to Snowflake, but just a few years back or even a decade, this was a wild thing to have a cloud database you could rely on. On top of that, we want to automate everything around the network and user management. We do want to have a flexible model for access control. We do though see there's a lot of similarities in the approach you can have in that, and we see the same requirements coming from a lot of companies, which is why we try to put into a more packaged solution. We also want to be able to run data pipelines, and as you just heard from Vestas, this can be done in various ways, and I guess each one of the companies you're in are deciding to do that, and it might not look like what the neighboring companies are doing. So I will not be focusing that much on the content of the data. This will be more of a platform introduction on how you can set up your data foundation. And the aim is often to try and reach the ability to do AI and analytics on your data within the company. So we're targeting these objects in Snowflake, which is the core objects. You are probably familiar with them if you opened the Snowflake account before. We're trying to automate how to create accounts. We're trying to make sure users and roles can be developed and provisioned. We're setting up warehouses so you can run queries and so on. Developing the schemas on named solutions with the concepts that are owned within a schema in Snowflake. So I will do a little back and forth. Some of it will be in presentation, and some of it will be looking into what the coded solution look like and how it looks like when it's deployed. So let me just go here. So starting off, when we deploy Snowsled, we have a package that we go into, and we can deploy these core objects. These are related to what you saw on the previous slide here. So the first two concepts is getting the platform ready, getting the account up and running, and setting up some initial boundaries. That's done in our Snowflake configuration package. And then we're doing making the ability to execute procedures to deploy projects. I've decided to call it project, but it could easily be called products, it could be called divisions or organizational units and so on. Then we have automated some stuff around APIs and written some stuff in Python that we're trying to build on. Each API is different, but we do have similarities across APIs when we meet the customer's data sources. Sometimes data sources are not APIs and can be directly connected to the databases. It's not always, but in enterprises, but we do have the ability to run Java functions to execute connection through the JDBCs. This was done in a previous demo on this user group session, so we might be able to go back and find that. Also, there's some random tools and tests we provision as we deploy the solution. All right. So what are we aiming for? We want to set up a hierarchy within a project. So a project can be equal with a database in Snowflake. A project should be managed or owned by someone. We call it the admin. Sometimes we call it the owner. And within that, you will have at least these two roles: a write set of permissions and a reader set of permissions. And you could have additional requirements to create more scoped roles within it, and you should probably do that if you're an advanced company. So we can automate the creation of these first, and we can use the boilerplate code to add more set of roles to a project. Similarly, you would also in your data foundation want a set of schemas to work through the data. You can decide to name these in a lot of ways. There's different conventions. In Devoteam, we have decided on these three. It's not my decision solely, but this is a way to set up an ingestion part, and you have a place for staging your data, and you have a place for presenting that data. And the roles that you saw on the previous slide, of course, related to how what they can do in each of these schemas. So the schemas is a kind of bucket for what a role can do, the scope of what a role can do with the permissions they're granted. All right, so how do we do that? So first we have some configuration files. These are not the most interesting ones, so I'll just jump a little bit past these. The way we have set it up to be done is to work with the stored procedures, and initially, and then now we might go a bit back here. Snowflake, it might seem weird today, but Snowflake, when I met it, you can only write stored procedures in JavaScript, and you can of course still do that, but most likely not up for a JavaScript procedure going into a SQL server, a SQL database, if they come in from SQL Server or similar. But for the administrative purposes, it actually makes a lot of sense to have the transaction control you get by JavaScript. So these procedures are written in JavaScript, and I actually continue to do that, even though it might seem a little silly to introduce a language like JavaScript for this. So to deploy a project in this case, you set up a lot of parameters. You make sure you can create the roles, and then you set up like an order of operations where you grant your permissions in the right order as you create them. So that means a procedure that when it's run, it will first create database, create the schemas, make sure the roles are available, and then interlink and intertwine all these objects by granting permissions on each of the schemas. So how does it look when you run it? I've just got another resolution on the screen, just a second. So when you deploy this, we're doing it through Git integrations. For this case, I had to start up the demo yesterday. I didn't have time to build a smaller scoped Git integration for this one, and it's hard to see what's happening when you're working with the Git integrated code, because then you will have to go back to the repo to see any changes. So for this case here, we're running from the Snowflake worksheets. So when you set up something like this, we're using procedures to execute all this. Let me just find where we did that part here. Just a second here. So if you want to create a new group, a new project here, you simply reference your procedure, and you reference the name you want to give it. Let's call it user group in this case. So that means I can now run procedures that deploy full solutions out here. And then it deploys the roles, it deploys the schema, it deploys the permissions that each of the roles need. So we see it as it works through here, it creates the database called user group and so on. Similarly, I have done that for the admin database, and now I didn't went that much into how the admin database is constructed, but it's deploying the functionality we need to create all of this. So usually I would go into to my code base, create a token to access the repo I'm working on. Then I will make sure I can make the Git integration from Snowflake, and I can deploy procedures directly into a database called admin. When you've done that, then you have the ability to use all the functionality in the admin database. Now we'll just have to change the role a bit here. So for this case, I've only deployed a subset of the functionality since we didn't need all of it for this particular demo here. So we do have some procedures that can execute and create functionality in Snowflake. The first one we're using here is called create DB schema role config, and you can create child databases towards the one we just created called user group. So when you have databases created and provisioned, you have the permissions around it. You might want to have a set of accounts that can distribute the data. And the reason why I'm going this route now, because it's the newest addition I've been adding to this functionality in the Snowsled repo. And the point is to be able to create a network of accounts so you can share data between the accounts you do. So for this purpose, I've decided to share only the admin database, since we can then streamline our code base across the network of accounts. I'll just go a bit back here so you can see what is the point of this. So we're not talking a lot about the content in the database. It doesn't really matter what is in the database. It could be tables, it could be procedures. But the point is to have a set of accounts to be able to distribute your Snowflake databases across regions. So for that, I've also set up a set of procedures to deploy that. So I go back here. In the same way as before, where we created and set up provisionings of databases and roles, we're now setting up not only roles, but even full accounts. I'm not sure how many of you have done a Snowflake account. You've probably done a trial account or something, but it's a very powerful feature to be able to set up a network of accounts and then share data between them or replicate data between them. I've only started up with the first one for this one. When you start up, you get an account name with a license plate like this, but as soon as you start creating more accounts, you need to name them. And that gives you the ability to set up a subset of your company in each account, but still have a streamlined administrative database across it. So to run a procedure to share data between them, you need to start up replication. So for this one, we have two replication. In this case, I have one called replication to a site account, meaning that I have two separate sites. I want them to be streamlined and they're kind of equal. So I want to replicate administrative functionality between them. But I can also think of them as a customer account. So for one thing, I need to replicate my company data in an internal way, but I also want to expose some data that might need to go to an external party, in this case a customer. So for this, we're using the replication groups and we're using multiple accounts. Let me see where we got this, because I just did it yesterday. Just a second. Yeah. Sorry. Need more permissions. So we have set up an account, the first one, and the second one. And if I want to log into that, I need to see my return when I create a new account. So when you run a new set up a new account here, you will get returned a JSON object with the passwords. Oh, sorry. Yeah, we already have that content here, so I'll just enlarge it so you can see what's going on. So in this case, it created an account for me called Denmark. And I have the ability to go over and log into it in the same way I would usually do that. Sorry. So now we're switching an account here. And I've set up the replication group on my primary side, which is the one we came from. So, sorry. So I've set up a new account, and I need to share the data. Until that, I'm using replication groups for that. Now it will not show me that. Sorry about that. But the point is, I'm having a replication group containing the database of this called admin, so I can across the different accounts share the same functionality, so I get it over here. So in this case, I'm in my secondary account. I'm receiving now data through the replication group, and it's coming from my main account. And then I can have a look what's in it. I can even refresh it if I want to. So the procedures in here are replicates of what you saw in the main account, and it's the way we are trying to streamline having functionality across multiple accounts. All right. So this is a way of getting functionality like you saw before, and the more extended objects that also are related, are within Snowflake, to be distributed across a range of accounts. So we're using the account feature and the replication group to reach that. Of course, and it's a few months since I made this slide, but of course everything in Snowflake is in a fast development cycle, so you would like to see some of these being outdated already, like Azure OpenAI, since we already have GPT models from OpenAI in there. So how does this look when you wanna see what's coming out of an account and what can you receive or achieve with a product like Snowflake? Is it that you will have a few databases in the middle here? We define them as source and refined data. And then you have functionality ingesting the data into it. In this case, we're mentioning REST APIs from Python functions, and we're also using stages for files, which are also being used in the REST API. We've developed functionality to reach connectivity towards databases through the JDBC and the Java runtime you have in Snowflake, and we also can automate the Confluent setups to have streaming ingest the data into the accounts. It might not always be the Confluent. We have seen better usage or more usage from companies using the Snowpipe streaming SDK and build that into the applications. But this is the basic ingesting functionality we have been seeing. Of course, on the outbound side of data, downstream side of data, we can set up connectivity to all the connections you probably know about, like Iceberg, as was mentioned in the previous sessions, of course, analytics apps, Tableau, Power BI, Sigma, internal Streamlit, and so on. And I've tested a little bit through to OneLake, not having the final go through yet, though. So this is some of the objects that we are deploying in a streamlined way for our customers. And sorry that everything on the demo did not go through right now. It was a kind of short notice that did set this up for you. So thanks for hearing about that, and let me know if there's any questions. I will pass the square here around if you want to. Yeah.
The question is around the roles.
Yes.
Like in the database you have roles, and now you're showing the BI side of that one.
Yeah.
So how do you synchronize the need? Like say, for example, a data analyst, and a data analyst need some sort of the data on the BI, but also need on the database there. So is there a way to synchronize the roles, or you need to maintain two separate roles?
So you mean if you have a role on your BI solution, that has to be set up on your BI side, meaning you have to use your SSO login to get access to the data. So as soon, if you use something like Power BI extracts, you will never be able to reach different roles access to different data in Snowflake. So you need to have each person log into the data source and connect to reach the data and only get what they are able to see. Is that what you're thinking about? Or?
I was more thinking like, as a governance point of view, you want to define the role at once and then use by the different, either it's a data platform or it's a BI platform, you want to have a role defined by the same user, and they can be using the same thing. Of course, you can use with the, using the provisioning part of the Snowflake. I don't know, you have tried that one, but...
the provisioning part, what do you mean?
Yeah, like, you can have a AD group.
Yeah, we're using that for integration.
So that's sort of thing. I was looking that if the tool can handle the Snowflake.
So usually when you set up integration in Snowflake, AD groups are one-to-one equal to roles. So the membership of a group becomes your role, and they will usually have the same name. In Snowflake, the role is just a label for a set of permissions, as I see it. So it's just a bucket of permissions. So whatever permissions you throw in that bucket, that's what the role can do and access. So for a BI solution, it's usually enough with reading permissions and not destructive permissions.
Thanks.
William?
Sure. My question's around the whole Git integration part, but also the replication of the admin database. Making updates, and back to the role question, if you want to make any updates to roles and kind of collect roles across different databases and stuff, how would you go about managing that across accounts?
There's multiple strategies for that. I would recommend not having the same named roles in the multiple accounts. It will usually just confuse everyone. So you need to make sure your naming conventions for each of the roles are globally unique, and your company policy will likely also reflect that. It will likely want you to add some localized naming or something. Yeah. So meaning the functionality with distribute is to provision the roles, meaning as you still have to call the functionality. But you can also do that. You could also replicate the roles if you want, but I'm not a fan of that. So I'd rather replicate the functionality to create the roles, and then I will deploy the roles in its own account. So meaning that when you distribute something like an admin database, it's distributing a set of stored procedures suitable and tailored to the organization.
Right, and the replication is one way. So you go from a admin account and then share from that. Yeah, okay.
Snowflake has two methods of replication, one being read-only. That's a primary and secondary. Secondary can only read to the database they're replicated. And you can also have the one where you failover, meaning you can write to it, but then you need to set up failover functionality. That's a little different use case.
Cool.
Yeah.
Maybe the external network integration could be an option for going both ways. You can set up that and do a REST API call to another Snowflake account, execute a query like show roles, and then get that one. And if you want to push something back, provided that you have the right credentials in that connection, then you can execute it on the end to create that role there, or drop that role if you no longer need it as possible.
The way I would think about replication is it's one way, as you mentioned, and if you want to do it multiple ways, like both ways, then you do a replication one way and then one the other way. And then you somewhat achieve the result. You can also do it like in a triangle or something. So you make sure that everything's in sync. The way we've set this up is to have one master place to store your procedures and then distribute from there. And I tested it a bit, and it's much faster than doing Git integrations to every single account, because then you need to move from your code repository into every account, and you need to make sure that you also, it's a fetch command, so git fetch, and you need to run that in every single account. If you set up the replication, then as soon as you've done the fetch account in one place, then it's being replicated to the rest. Yeah.
A question from a viewer. Is there a reason not to use Terraform for setting up a project?
That's a different approach, and you can definitely do that, and it's been around for a longer time. The reason I think this is better is that you use Snowflake's native functionality for replicating, and you always have access to the newest feature that Snowflake has released. In Terraform, you will have to wait or have to embrace that in some other command anyway. That's my opinion, but you can still do it in Terraform if you like that. Thanks for seeing it, and see you in a while.